They sold my house while I was in the hospital. Not rented. Not borrowed. Sold. My name was still on the mailbox. My photo still hung in the hallway. And yet, it wasn't mine anymore. The worst part. It was my own children who signed the papers. I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes in my arm, recovering from a stroke I never saw coming. While they emptied out everything I had built. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. At least not out loud. Because I had a plan. One they never saw coming. So stay with me until the end. Because this is the story of how they tried to erase me. And how I came back, to put their names on the eviction notice. If you believe it's never too late to reclaim your power. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. The sound of the heart monitor was soft. Almost hypnotic. A pale winter light spilled through the hospital window. It had been 2 days since I woke up from a stroke. The nurses said I was lucky. That it could have been worse. That I was doing fine. But something inside me didn't feel fine. My children, Mark and Emily, had been oddly distant. They came on the first day, kissed my forehead, told me to rest. And vanished. No texts. No flowers. Not even a bottle of water left on the nightstand. On the third day, it was my longtime friend Norma who walked in. Carrying a bottle of orange juice and a worried look. She sat beside me slowly, took my hand in hers, and whispered. "Did you hear?" I frowned. She hesitated. Then finally said. "They sold your house. My name is Helen Monroe. I'm 68 years old. And for most of my life, I was the kind of mother who erased herself in the name of love. I worked as a schoolteacher for 32 years. I taught hundreds of children how to read, write, and dream of a future. But at home, my dedication ran even deeper. I was never one for luxury, but I did everything in my power to give my children, Mark and Emily, the kind of childhood I never had: safety, education, affection. I packed their lunches with heart-shaped sandwich cutters. I stitched school costumes with hot glue and thread. I decorated birthday cakes with more passion than any professional baker. And even when I was running on empty, I showed up to every school play, every meeting, every celebration, smiling, like pain didn't exist. After my husband Henry passed, a kind man, but emotionally distant, I sold our countryside home and bought a small house in the neighborhood where I grew up. It was modest, but full of soul. The kind of place that smelled like fresh cornbread in the evening, and lavender in the morning. I planted a garden with my own hands. Sewed curtains from discounted fabric. Hung up old pictures and faded frames. That house was my nest. My anchor. My world. Mark was always the more pragmatic one. He studied business and built a career with a real estate firm. Emily was softer, more creative. She studied fashion but eventually joined her brother's company, working in marketing. They used to call me a warrior. Said I was the backbone of the family. Every Mother's Day, they'd post old photos with long captions about how much they loved me. But over time, that affection turned into utility. And utility became convenience. First came the small loan requests. Then, advances for courses, trips, renovations. And then, the subtle suggestions. "Mom, this house is too big for you. It must be hard to keep up with everything. You should move somewhere smaller. Easier. More modern. While it still has value, Mom." I pretended not to hear. Pretended not to understand. Because facing the truth would have broken me. But the truth showed up anyway. The day I collapsed in the kitchen from a mild stroke. One moment I was holding a mug of tea. The next, I was in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm and a heart heavy with silence. And that's where the final blow landed. They sold my house. No conversation. No visit. Not even a phone call. Just a cold email. Subject line, sale confirmation, registration complete. And in that moment, I understood. They hadn't just taken my house. They had taken my home. My space. My dignity. My place in the world. Erased, discarded, replaced by numbers and legal paperwork. It was Norma who told me. She was sitting beside my bed, visibly shaken, when she handed me her phone. On the screen was a real estate listing, marked sold. And there they were. Photos of my living room. My floral curtains. The armchair where I used to knit. The quilt I had stitched by hand with soft blue and yellow threads. Every corner of that house, exposed to the world. As if it had never been mine. My eyes burned. But the tears didn't come. Only a coldness. A cold that rose from deep inside me and froze everything it touched. They said it was for your own good, Helen, Norma whispered. They said you shouldn't live alone anymore, that the money could be put to better use, that you'd be better off this way. Better. Better for who? My voice came out low, but sharp. I'm not a piece of property. I'm a person. That night, I waited for the nurse to finish her shift. Then, slowly, I pulled back the blanket from my legs. The floor was cold beneath my feet, but I needed to feel something, anything. A reminder that I was still alive. Each step to the window was a battle against weakness. But I had to see the sky. I had to remember that the world was still out there. That I was still out there. And as I stood there, looking out at the snow-covered city lights, I made a promise to myself. They took everything from me. Now, I'll take back what they value most. The comfort of certainty. But I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't wait. I would return. With silence. With strategy. With dignity. And when I came back, I wouldn't knock. I'd walk in with my own key. The next morning, I asked to be discharged. The nurses tried to convince me to stay a few more days. They said my body was still weak. That it would be risky. But I knew. What weakened me the most wasn't the fall, or even the stroke. It was the silence of humiliation. I needed to get out. Breathe different air. Make a plan. Norma helped me sign the paperwork. She handled everything quietly, like she understood that what I needed most wasn't advice. It was loyalty. She took me to her small apartment, where she'd been living alone since the divorce. A cozy little place, with books on every shelf, the smell of fresh bread in the air. And an old couch that felt like it hugged you when you sat down. That place had something rare. Kindness without pity. The first few days were tough. Even walking down the hallway was a challenge. My muscles trembled. My voice would sometimes fail me. But my mind had never been clearer. I saw everything, especially what my children had become. Mark and Emily didn't step away because they didn't know how to help. They stepped away because they didn't want to. To them, I was no longer a mother. Just a burden they had finally gotten rid of. What they didn't know was that I had an ace up my sleeve. Years ago, shortly after Henry died, I received a small inheritance from a great-aunt who lived out in the country. It was unexpected, and silent. I didn't tell a soul. I opened a separate bank account in my name only, and reached out to a former student of mine. Now a financial advisor. Together, we invested that money wisely, discreetly, and consistently. And now, at 68 years old. With no home, no husband, and no family to rely on. I had something far more valuable. financial freedom. But here's the thing. I didn't just want another house. I wanted my life back. With Norma's quiet help, I found out that my daughter and her husband were living in a beautiful home. Buried in debt. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But behind the curtains were missed payments, renegotiations, overdue notices. The house was on the verge of being lost. And they didn't even know it yet. This was my chance. But I had to move carefully. If they found out I had money, they'd try to guilt me, manipulate me. Maybe even claim I was unstable, just like they'd hinted before. So I played the part. I pretended to be weak. I pretended to be lost. I pretended to be quiet. Meanwhile, Norma worked behind the scenes. Meeting with my former student, organizing paperwork, tracking every detail of what I began calling the invisible take-back. But the hardest obstacle wasn't out there. It was inside me. That whisper that came every night. What if you can't do this? What if it's too late? What if they were right about you? But then I'd remember Emily's words. So sweet on the outside, so cold underneath. You don't understand how the world works, Mom. We have to think about the bigger picture now. The bigger picture didn't include me. And so, even while trembling, even through the fear, even while doubting everything, I took the first step. It was a gray Tuesday morning when Norma took me to the bank. I wore a gray scarf, sunglasses, and leaned on a cane. More than protection from the cold, the outfit was my armor. The shield of a woman who was rebuilding herself from the inside out. But wasn't quite ready to be seen. In a private room at the bank, I met with one of my former students. Now a financial advisor. She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Respect. Not pity. We transferred the funds to a new account. An account created for one purpose only. To reclaim my life on my own terms. Before I left, she handed me a simple debit card with my name in silver letters. And in the notes section of the account, she wrote, "For Helen's freedom." On the ride back to Norma's, my hands were trembling. But not from fear. It was as if blood had finally started flowing again. I began walking every day, first just around the apartment. Then down the hallway. And a month later, around the block. I bought a brand new notebook. And on the very first page, I wrote in firm, steady handwriting. I don't want revenge. I want peace. But if justice comes with it, so be it. I started waking up earlier. Making my own coffee. Organizing my pills. Writing out my to-do lists. Each small victory, like reaching the sugar jar on my own, was celebrated in silence. It wasn't just my body healing. It was my autonomy. Norma took me to a reading group at the local community center. Women like me. Invisible on the outside. But full of life on the inside. With each meeting, I spoke a little more. And listened even more than that. In those quiet circles of truth, I began to see myself again. It was Norma who introduced me to a real estate agent she trusted. I showed him my daughter's house, casually, like I was just browsing homes in the area. A week later, he called. His voice was low. Firm. "Helen, they've put the house on the market. They're desperate to sell fast." My heart skipped a beat. He explained the purchase could be made discreetly, through the fund. They would never know it was me. That night, I said nothing. I made a simple soup. Sat at the table. Placed the offer letter in front of me. And signed it with a steady hand. 2 days later, I got the call. The offer had been accepted. I signed the closing documents at the title office, no tears. Just a calm smile. and eyes that saw far beyond the moment. The house was mine. Again. But this time, I didn't come back as a guest. I came back as the owner. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I didn't need anyone's permission to exist. On the morning of the official move, I went to the house myself. The key turned easily in the lock. My daughter's house was now, officially, mine. From the outside, the facade looked the same. But inside, something had shifted. Maybe it was the air. Maybe it was me. There was a new kind of silence. As if the house itself understood it now belonged to someone who knew its true worth. I hired a moving company that cleared out all the old furniture in just a few hours. I didn't touch a single item with my own hands. Not out of contempt, but out of respect for myself. Those things held memories that no longer belonged to me. The documents made it clear, they had sold in a rush, barely reading the fine print. The clause for immediate vacancy was right there. No loopholes. No foul play. Just haste, and greed. That afternoon, sitting on the porch with Norma beside me and a cup of tea in hand, my phone rang. It was Emily. Her voice trembled, caught between disbelief and panic. "Mom, did you buy my house?" I closed my eyes for a moment, choosing my words not to wound, but to stand firm. "No, Emily," I said calmly. "I bought the house that was for sale." There was silence on the other end. Heavy silence. The kind that arrives when reality finally knocks on the door. "How could you do this? That's cruel. We have nowhere to go." I took a deep breath. My voice steady, but not cold. "Just like I had nowhere to go, Emily. At least you still have each other." I had no one. The next day, Mark showed up in person. Unannounced, like always. As if everything still belonged to him. He tried to smile, tried to play the role of the concerned son. But his eyes couldn't hide the discomfort. "Mom, we need to talk. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We sold the house thinking about what was best for you. We thought it would be better for you to live somewhere quiet, with care." "With care?" I replied. "Or with distance?" He swallowed hard. The mask slipped for just a moment. "Look, I know it looks bad, but everything happened so fast. We were under pressure, and we thought maybe you weren't useful anymore." I cut in. "Or important." He fumbled. Tried to explain. Said the decision was made with my comfort in mind. That they just wanted me in a safe place. "It wasn't out of malice, Mom. It was just a hard decision." "Hard for who?" I asked. "For me, it was abandonment. For you, it was convenience. You thought about your wallets. And now you'll have to think about a new address." His expression changed instantly. The gentle tone disappeared. His voice rose. "You're being vindictive. This is petty. You're just an old, bitter woman." I looked at him with the calm of someone who had finally learned her worth. "I'd rather be an old woman who's free than a mother who's manipulated." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. But for the first time, that door wasn't a closing. It was an opening. Days later, I got an email. It was from Emily. A formal apology. Carefully worded, maybe even copied from a template. Attached was a suggestion. If I reconsidered, they would be willing to welcome me back into the family. I laughed. A genuine laugh. Almost childlike. Because the woman they once knew. The one who sacrificed, who yielded, who accepted everything in the name of peace. She stayed behind. In that hospital bed. The day they sold my house without even looking back. The woman who now lived in that wide, sunlit house, with open windows and the scent of lavender in the air, was someone else entirely. And she wasn't going back. Little by little, the house began to reflect who I was. I replaced the heavy curtains with light fabrics that danced in the morning breeze. I painted one of the living room walls a soft shade of blue. The same blue I used to see from the hospital window. On the days I wondered if there was still life waiting for me outside. In the front yard, I planted lavender, daisies, and rosemary. I wanted a scent that reminded me of freedom, not the past. I created a routine that was mine, and mine alone. In the mornings, I made tea and walked barefoot through the garden. In the afternoons, I sat at my desk with a fresh notebook and a smooth pen. I started writing. No deadlines. No structure. No expectations. Journals, letters I never sent, memories I had kept locked away for years. Some hurt. Others made me laugh. But every word was a release. Every line, a small rebirth. It was Norma who suggested I share a few entries online. She said maybe there were other women out there. Women who felt like I once did. Invisible, forgotten, disposable. At first, I hesitated. But one day, I posted a short paragraph. I didn't expect anything. And then something happened. People responded. Dozens. Then hundreds. Some women shared similar stories. Others simply wrote, "Thank you, for putting into words what I've never been able to say." For the first time in decades, I realized. My voice wasn't echoing into emptiness. I started replying. I exchanged messages. I laughed with strangers who quickly became friends. Friends who didn't know me as someone's mother or someone's wife. They knew me simply as Helen. And that was liberating. One day, a woman messaged me. "You have no idea how much your words gave me strength. After reading your story, I walked away from a 20-year marriage. Thank you for existing." I put my phone down and cried. Not from sadness. But from something else. Recognition. For the first time, I understood. The pain I had lived through had a purpose. That spring, I sat on the porch with a warm cup of tea and watched the sun rise. It was the same sun I used to see from my kitchen window years ago, while making coffee for the family. But this time, it felt different. Softer. Warmer. As if it had come just for me. And in that moment, I smiled. Because I understood something deeply. I didn't just reclaim a house. I reclaimed myself. My autonomy. My voice. My dignity. And even if it took nearly 7 decades, it was enough. Because it's never too late to begin again. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Do you believe it's never too late to start over? Then subscribe and turn on the notifications. Here, every week, we bring you stories of healing, justice, and powerful new beginnings. Now tell me, what part of this story moved you the most? Leave your comment below. I'd love to read it. Until the next video. With love. Her journey.